The stars looked different from inside the escape pod. Kit pressed their small hands against the cold viewport, watching as pieces of their colony ship drifted past like dying fireflies. The pod's emergency lights cast a dim red glow across their pale blue skin, making the 12-year-old Lumini child look almost purple in the darkness. Another explosion lit up space behind them. Kit didn't need to turn around to know what it meant. Another pod, another family, gone. The dark swarm ships were picking them off one by one. Their black ships looked like angry insects against the stars, their weapons cutting through the refugee fleet with terrifying precision. The pod's computer kept repeating the same message. Warning. Life support at 40%. Please seek immediate assistance. Kit had sent out distress calls to the other pods, but none answered. Everyone was running, trying to save themselves. The Lumini were peaceful people. They had no weapons, no defenses. Running was all they could do. Kit remembered their mother's last words before pushing them into the pod. Stay quiet, stay still, and never stop hoping. Then the airlock had closed, and the automatic launch sequence had fired. Kit had watched through the viewport as their mother grew smaller and smaller, still standing there in the launching bay as the dark swarm boarding parties broke through. A violent shake rattled the pod. The computer's voice changed its tone. Warning. Hull breach detected. Sealing compartment 3. Kit felt their heart race. The pod was dying, piece by piece. The air was getting thinner. The emergency supplies would last maybe another day. But with the hull breach, that time was now much shorter. Through the viewport, Kit could see other pods in the distance. Some were bigger, meant for families. They were running at full speed, their engines burning bright against the darkness. Kit's pod was smaller, meant for 1 or 2 people at most. Its engines were damaged in the launch, leaving it tumbling slowly through space. Please, Kit whispered into the radio again, their voice shaking. This is Escape Pod 247. I am a child. I need help. Static answered back. Just like the last 100 times, Kit could see the other pods receiving the message. The pod systems showed the signals being picked up. But one by one, they kept going, burning their engines harder to get away from the dark swarm. Kit understood why. The dark swarm had been hunting their people for months now, destroying their colonies one by one. They called the Lumini living light pollution and cosmic parasites because of their natural ability to bend and shape light. It didn't matter that the Lumini only used this ability for art and healing. The dark swarm had decided they were a threat, and that was enough. The pod tumbled again, and Kit saw something that made their heart stop. A dark swarm fighter, sleek and black, was moving between the fleeing pods. It would fire once, maybe twice, and another pod would disappear in a flash of light. It was getting closer. The computer spoke again. Warning. Life support at 25%. External temperature dropping. Please seek immediate assistance. Kit curled up in the emergency blanket, trying to stay warm. The pod's heaters were failing too. Everything was failing. Kit thought about their mother, about their home colony with its beautiful light sculptures and floating gardens. They thought about school, about learning to shape light into dancing patterns with their friends. All of it was gone now. The dark swarm had destroyed everything, and soon they would destroy this pod too. But Kit remembered their mother's words. Never stop hoping. Even as the cold crept in and the air grew thinner, Kit kept sending the distress signal. The radio crackled with static, the same empty sound it had made for hours. The stars continued to drift past the viewport, and somewhere in the distance, another pod exploded. Kit's eyes grew heavy. The computer's warnings became a blur of sound. As consciousness started to fade, Kit saw a new light through the viewport. It was different from the others, not the angry red of weapons fire or the desperate blue of escape pod engines. It was steady, white, and getting closer. Kit tried to focus on it, but the cold and lack of oxygen were too strong. The last thing they saw before passing out was a strange shape moving toward the pod, bigger than a fighter but smaller than a colony ship. It had markings Kit had never seen before, in a language they didn't recognize. Staff Sergeant Jack Miller stood at his monitoring station aboard the HSS Valor, trying to ignore the dull headache forming behind his eyes. The night shift was always the hardest, especially when they were under orders to maintain complete radio silence. The Valor wasn't a warship. It was just a transport vessel moving supplies between human outposts. But even supply runs had become dangerous lately. The soft ping from his console almost made him jump. It was so faint, he thought he had imagined it at first. But there it was again, a distress signal, barely stronger than background radiation. Jack adjusted the sensors, trying to clean up the signal. The captain had been clear. No unnecessary stops, no deviations from their route. The war hadn't reached this sector yet, but that could change any day. "Sir," Jack called out to Lieutenant Rogers, who was half asleep in the command chair. "I'm picking up something odd." He sent the signal data to the main screen. "It's not matching any known patterns in our database." Rogers rubbed his eyes. "Probably space junk. We're not stopping for salvage, Miller." "It's not junk, sir." Jack enhanced the signal further. "There's a pattern. And..." He paused, double-checking the readings. "There are signs of weapons fire in that sector. Recent weapons fire." The bridge grew quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. The war was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Rogers stood up, suddenly wide awake. "How far off course would we have to go?" 20 minutes at full thrust, sir. The signal is weak but close." Rogers shook his head. "Orders are orders, Sergeant. We maintain radio silence and stay on course." Jack felt something twist in his stomach. He'd been a soldier long enough to know when to follow orders and when to trust his gut. "Sir, with respect, what if it's one of ours? We've got colony ships all through this sector. If they ran into trouble, and if it's a trap," Rogers countered. "The enemy's gotten clever. They know we can't help ourselves. We always stop to help." Jack brought up the sensor data again. "The energy signature is all wrong for a trap, sir. Too weak, too irregular. Whatever's out there is running out of power. Fast." He took a deep breath. "Sir, I'll take full responsibility. Note it in the log. But we can't just..." A new alarm cut him off. The sensors had picked up something else. Larger ships, moving fast, hunting patterns. They were still far off, but their direction was clear. They were heading toward the distress signal. Rogers saw it too. He stood quiet for a long moment, then cursed under his breath. "Helm, adjust course. 20 degrees starboard. Full thrust for 5 minutes. Then kill all engines. We go in dark." He turned to Jack. "You've got 15 minutes, Miller. Make them count." The Valor changed course smoothly, its engines pushing against the darkness of space. As they got closer, the sensors painted a clearer picture. There was debris everywhere, pieces of what must have been a massive ship or several ships, and there, tumbling slowly between the fragments, was a single escape pod. "Life signs?" Rogers asked. The sensor officer shook her head. "Can't tell, sir. The pod systems are almost dead. But..." She adjusted something. "There's movement inside. Something small." Jack was already moving toward the door. "Request permission to suit up for rescue operations, sir." Rogers nodded. "Granted. But Miller..." Jack stopped at the door. "If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you abort. That's an order." The rescue shuttle was cold and cramped, but Jack barely noticed as he piloted it toward the pod. As he got closer, he could see that the pod's design was like nothing in the human database. The metal seemed to shimmer slightly, even without direct light hitting it. Through the pod's viewport, Jack caught a glimpse of something that made his breath catch. A small figure, curled up and still, with skin that seemed to glow faintly blue in the pod's dying emergency lights. Not human, definitely not human, but undeniably a child. Jack keyed his radio. "Sir, we've got a situation here." He watched as the pod's internal lights flickered, growing weaker. Whatever he was going to do, he had to do it fast. The occupants alive, but he saw the oxygen gauge on the pod's external display. Critical levels. Permission to bring them aboard, sir. They're running out of air. The radio crackled with static for what felt like forever. Finally, Roger's voice came through. Do it fast, Miller. Those ships we detected, they're changing course. They know we're here. The medical bay of the HSS Valor was not built for alien patients. Dr. Anna rushed around the small room, trying to make sense of the readings on her medical scanner. The small blue-skinned being lay unconscious on the examination table, breathing shallow breaths. Jack stood by the door, still in his spacesuit minus the helmet, watching anxiously. This breaks every first contact protocol in the book, Dr. Anna muttered, but her hands moved quickly and surely as she worked. Their biology is fascinating. Look at this. She pointed to the scanner display. Their cells seem to interact with light in a way I've never seen before. It's almost like they're absorbing it. Jack stepped closer. Can you help them? Surprisingly, yes. Dr. Anna adjusted something on the medical pod. Their basic structure is not too different from ours. They need oxygen, they have a circulatory system, but they also need light. Direct light. She turned up the brightness of the medical bay lights to maximum. The child's skin seemed to shimmer in response. The ship shuddered slightly. They were still running, trying to put distance between themselves and whatever ships had been hunting the escape pod. Lieutenant Rogers' voice came over the intercom. Doctor, we need a status report. Now. The child is stable, Dr. Anna replied. But they're suffering from oxygen deprivation and what I can only describe as light starvation. Their species seems to need light the way we need food. As if responding to her words, the alien child stirred. Their eyes opened slowly. They were a striking silver color, with pupils that adjusted like camera lenses. The child saw Jack first and tried to move away, but was too weak. It's okay, Jack said softly, staying where he was. You're safe now. We found your pod. He wasn't sure if the child could understand him, but he kept his voice gentle. The child's eyes darted around the room, taking in the unfamiliar environment. Then, in perfect but oddly accented English, they spoke. You answered my call. Dr. Anna and Jack exchanged surprised looks. Yes, Jack replied. I'm Jack. This is Dr. Anna. You're aboard a human ship called the Valor. Can you tell us your name? Kit, the child said weakly. My people. We learn languages quickly. It helps with trade. Their voice caught. Or it did, before the dark swarm came. Another shake ran through the ship, stronger this time. Roger's voice came again, tenser now. Doctor, Sergeant, if our guest can talk, we need answers. The ships following us are gaining, and they're not responding to hails. Kit tried to sit up, panic clear in their silver eyes. The dark swarm found you. You have to let me go. They'll kill you too, just for helping me. My people, we tried to find allies, but everyone abandoned us when the dark swarm threatened them. We're not worth dying for. Jack moved closer, ignoring Dr. Anna's warning look. Hey, look at me, Kit. He waited until those silver eyes met his. On our world, we have a saying. No one gets left behind. We don't abandon people who need help, especially not children. It doesn't matter what you are or where you're from. Dr. Anna's scanner beeped. Their vitals are improving. The light therapy is working. She looked at the readings again. But there's something else. Jack, look at this pattern. The way their cells interact with light. If I'm reading this right, they can actually control it somehow. Kit's voice was small but steadier. Light shaping. It's what we do. What we did. The dark swarm think it makes us dangerous. They say we'll blind their ships, disable their sensors. But we only used it for art, for healing. We never. The ship rocked violently. Red emergency lights began flashing. Roger's voice was sharp now. Multiple ships on approach. Energy readings matched the weapons signatures we found near the pod. They're charging weapons. They're sensors, Kit whispered. They track by light patterns. Every ship leaves a light trail in space, too faint for most species to see. But they can see it, and so can we. They looked at Jack. I can help, if you'll trust me. I can't fight them, but I can confuse their targeting systems, make us harder to see. Dr. Anna started to object, but Jack raised his hand. How long will it take you to recover enough to do this? With these lights. Kit glanced up at the bright medical bay lights. Minutes, but you don't understand. If I help you, they'll never stop hunting you. Your whole ship will be marked, just like my people were. Jack smiled grimly. Well then, I guess we better make sure they don't catch us. He turned to Dr. Anna. Doc, turn every light we've got up to maximum. Let's give our new friend here all the strength we can. He keyed his radio. Bridge, this is Miller. Tell the lieutenant we have a plan. A crazy one, but it's better than nothing. The bridge of the HS Valor was bathed in blinding light. Every panel, every screen, every available light source had been turned to maximum brightness. Kit stood in the center, their blue skin almost white with absorbed energy. Jack watched as the young alien's hands moved in graceful patterns, bending the light around them in ways that made his eyes hurt. 3 dark swarm destroyers, the sensor officer reported, her voice tense, coming in fast from port side. Their weapons are hot. The ship's tactical display showed the enemy vessels as angry red dots, spreading out to surround them. Lieutenant Rogers gripped his chair's armrests. How long until they're in firing range? 2 minutes, Kit answered before anyone else could. Their silver eyes were focused on something no one else could see. They're using a standard hunting formation, but they're confused. The light trails. I'm making them see dozens of ships instead of one. Jack moved closer to Rogers. Sir, we need to buy more time. Kit says they can't maintain this light bending forever. Rogers nodded grimly. Helm, take us into that debris field. He pointed to a cluster of destroyed ships and asteroids ahead. Keep our engine output minimal. Let Kit's light show do the work. The Valor moved carefully through space, its engines barely pushing it forward. Around them, the light seemed to dance and split, creating ghost images of ships moving in all directions. Through the main viewport, Jack could see the dark swarm ships hesitating, their black hulls reflecting the false light signatures. They're spreading out, Kit said, sweat visible on their forehead, trying to cover more space. But they stumbled slightly, and Jack moved quickly to steady them. But they're angry now. They hate being tricked. A warning alarm blared. Energy spike. The sensor officer shouted. They're firing blind. The ship rocked as an energy beam passed close by. Rogers barked orders. Evasive maneuvers. Kit, can you make us look like debris? Kit's hands moved faster, the light around the ship shifting and changing. Yes, but they're adapting. The dark swarm learned quickly. That's how they've hunted my people so effectively. Another blast rocked the ship, closer this time. Warning lights flashed across the engineering console, hull plating down to 60%. Someone called out. Jack watched as Kit's movements became less steady. The young alien was tiring, the constant manipulation of light draining their strength. But they kept going, their determination visible in every line of their body. There, Kit suddenly pointed toward a dense cluster of asteroids. The rocks there. They're full of crystal formations. If I can reach them, I can use them to multiply our light patterns, make it impossible for them to find us. Rogers looked at the tactical display. That's awfully close to their firing range. We don't have a choice, Jack said. Kit can't keep this up much longer. And once they figure out our true position. Another blast hit, this time scoring a direct hit on their port side. The ship lurched violently. Hull breach on deck 3. Engineering reported. Emergency containment holding. Do it, Rogers ordered. Full power to engines. Head for those asteroids. The Valor surged forward, and Kit's hands became a blur of motion. The light around them fractured into 1,000 pieces, each one looking like a different ship fleeing in a different direction. The dark swarm ships fired continuously now, their beams cutting through space in a deadly web. Almost there, Kit whispered, their voice strained. Just a few more seconds. A massive blast caught them on the starboard side. Kit fell, their concentration breaking for a moment. The light show around them flickered, and Jack saw the dark swarm ships immediately turn toward their true position. No. Kit pushed themselves up, their small hands shaking with effort. The light show resumed, but the dark swarm were closing in fast. Impact with asteroid field in 10 seconds. Helm reported. Kit, Jack knelt beside them. Whatever you're going to do with those crystals, get ready. The young alien nodded, their silver eyes now glowing with absorbed light. Tell everyone to close their eyes. This will be bright. The Valor plunged into the asteroid field just as the dark swarm opened fire with everything they had. Kit raised their hands one final time, and the world turned white. The asteroid field drifted silently around the damaged HSS Valor. Inside the ship's medical bay, Kit lay on a bed, their blue skin pale and dull. The massive burst of light bending had taken almost everything out of them, but it had worked. The dark swarm ships had lost them in the chaos of refracted light through the crystal-filled asteroids. Jack sat beside Kit's bed, watching Dr. Anna check the young aliens' vital signs. Will they be okay? They're exhausted, but recovering. Dr. Anna adjusted the light therapy settings. What they did out there, I've never seen anything like it. The amount of energy they channeled through their body should have killed them. Kit's eyes fluttered open. Had to protect the ship. Their voice was weak but clear. But now I know there are others nearby. I felt them when I connected with the crystals. My people. Some of them survived. Jack leaned forward. You mean there are more Lumini in this sector? Can you tell where? Before Kit could answer, Lieutenant Rogers walked in. His uniform was dirty and torn from emergency repairs, but his eyes were alert. We've got company. A ship just appeared on our sensors. It's using some kind of stealth technology we've never seen before. Kit tried to sit up. Let me see. Dr. Anna helped them to a screen showing the sensor readings. Kit's silver eyes widened. It's them. That's a Lumini vessel. One of our deep space refuges. They must have detected my light burst. The ship's intercom crackled. Sir, the sensor officer's voice was tense. They're hailing us, but it's not like any communication signal I've ever seen. It's pure light patterns. I can translate, Kit said, attempting to stand. They swayed slightly, and Jack steadied them. Please, let me talk to them. They'll be scared. No one has ever helped us before. Rogers looked at Dr. Anna, who nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes. No more. They're still too weak. They made their way to the bridge, Kit leaning heavily on Jack for support. The main screen showed a shimming vessel that seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to focus on its true shape. Kit raised their hands weakly, and patterns of light began to dance between their fingers. The response was immediate. The screen filled with complex patterns of light that made Jack's eyes water. Kit's hands moved faster, their own patterns becoming more intricate. They don't believe you rescued me, Kit translated, their voice sad. They think you're using me as bait, like others have before. Their hands moved again, creating new patterns. I'm telling them what you did, how you broke your own rules to save me, how you fought the dark swarm. The response came in sharp, angry bursts of light. Kit's shoulders slumped. They say it's a trick, that no species would risk themselves for a Lumini child. They're ordering us to release me or they'll attack. Jack stepped forward. May I? He asked Kit. When they nodded, he addressed the screen. I'm Staff Sergeant Jack Miller of the Human Systems Alliance. I don't understand your light language, so I'll speak plainly. We found a child alone in space, and we helped them. That's all. Where I come from, that's not heroic or special. It's just what you do." Kit translated his words into light patterns. For a long moment, there was no response. Then, slowly, new patterns emerged on the screen. Kit's hands trembled as they translated. "They say they want to believe us, but they've been betrayed so many times." Kit created more patterns. "I'm showing them my memories. The rescue, the chase, how you turned every light on the ship up to help me recover, how your doctor treated me like her own patient." The screen flickered, and suddenly it showed the interior of the other ship. A group of Lumini stood there, their blue skin gleaming under their own lights. One stepped forward, their silver eyes examining Jack closely through the screen. "I am Elder Light." They spoke in careful English. "Kit has shown us truth and light, which cannot lie. But we must ask, why? Why would you risk everything for one child of a dying species?" Jack met their gaze steadily. "Because it was right. Because where humanity goes, we bring our values with us. And we believe that nobody deserves to be abandoned. Nobody deserves to face extinction just because they're different." The elder was quiet for a long moment. Then they did something that made Kit gasp. They dimmed their own light, a sign of deep respect in Lumini culture. "Perhaps," they said slowly, "we have finally found the allies we needed. Not the strongest or the most advanced, but the ones with the strength to stand up for what is right." Kit's hands created one final pattern of light. "I told them," they said softly, "that humans don't just fight with weapons. They fight with their hearts, and that makes them stronger than the Dark Swarm could ever understand." The command center of the Lumini refuge ship hummed with soft light. Jack stood before a table displaying a holographic map of the sector, surrounded by both human and Lumini officers. Kit sat nearby, now fully recovered, and acting as a bridge between the two species. "The Dark Swarm will return," Elder Light said, their silver eyes studying the map. "They always do. They found every hidden refuge we've built. Their tracking systems are too advanced." Jack pointed to several points on the map. "Then we change the game. We stop hiding and start fighting back." He looked around the room. "Your people can bend light in ways we've never seen. My people have been fighting wars for thousands of years. Together, we might have a chance." A younger Lumini stepped forward, their skin pulsing with skeptical patterns of light. Kit translated. "Ray asks how a small transport ship and a refugee vessel can fight an entire Darkswarm battle fleet. Because they don't expect us to fight at all." Jack smiled. "They expect the Lumini to run and hide. They expect humans to mind their own business. They don't expect us to work together." He touched the hologram, zooming in on the asteroid field. "Kit showed us something when we escaped. Those crystals didn't just reflect light. They amplified it." Elder Light's skin brightened with interest. "The crystal formations. Yes, we've used them for art, for communication. But as weapons?" "Not weapons," Jack corrected. "Tools. Kit, show them what you showed me." Kit stood and raised their hands. The hologram shifted, showing the complex light patterns they had created during their escape. "When I connected with the crystals, I could create dozens of false images, but with more Lumini working together, linking their powers through the crystals, we could create an entire phantom fleet." Elder Light finished, understanding dawning in their eyes. The Dark Swarm would see thousands of ships where there are only two. Jack nodded. "And while they're confused, we strike. The Valor's not a warship, but we have weapons. Standard issue point defense systems, mining charges for clearing asteroid fields. If we modify them, combine them with your light-bending abilities." A human engineer spoke up. "Sir, what if we took those mining charges and packed them with crystal fragments? When they detonate, the light show would be blinding," Kit said excitedly. "And in space, light is a weapon. especially against ships that rely so heavily on visual targeting. The room buzzed with energy as humans and Lumini began working together, sharing ideas. Someone suggested coating the Valor's hull with crystal dust to make it harder to target. Another proposed using the Lumini's abilities to bend scanner beams around their ships, making them virtually invisible. Elder Light watched it all with growing hope in their silver eyes. For so long, we believed our abilities were only good for creating beauty. We never thought to use them for protection. Sometimes the best defense comes from unexpected places, Jack said. He turned to Kit. Your people's art, their love of light and beauty. The Dark Swarm saw it as a threat. But they were wrong. It's not a weakness. It's your strength. They just never imagined you use it like this. The hologram showed their planned formation. The Valor and the Lumini ship, surrounded by a carefully arranged pattern of crystal-laden asteroids. Kit's hands moved, demonstrating how they would coordinate the light bending between all the Lumini on board. We'll only get one chance, Jack warned. Once they realize what we're doing, they'll adapt. They'll find ways to counter it. Then we make it count, Kit said firmly. Their silver eyes shone with determination. My people have been running for so long. But you showed us there's another way. You showed us that sometimes the best way to survive is to stand and fight. Elder Light placed a hand on Kit's shoulder. Young one, you have brought us more than allies. You have brought us hope. They turned to Jack. We will need time to prepare, to gather the crystals, to practice the coordinated light bending. It will not be easy. Jack looked at the determined faces around him. Human and Lumini alike. Nothing worth doing ever is. But together, he smiled. Together, we're going to show the Dark Swarm something they've never seen before. We're going to show them what happens when you push peaceful people too far. The room filled with patterns of light as the Lumini expressed their agreement, their hope, their determination. And in the middle of it all, Kit stood tall, no longer the scared child in an escape pod, but a bridge between two species who had found strength in each other. Space lit up like a newborn star. The Dark Swarm fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel, their black ships spreading out in attack formation. Their sensors detected what appeared to be hundreds of vessels scattered throughout the asteroid field, but they knew better. Their intelligence had reported only 2 ships in this sector, a human transport vessel and a Lumini refugee ship. Inside the HSS Valor, Jack watched the enemy fleet approach. Beside him, Kit's hands moved steadily, coordinating with dozens of other Lumini. The bridge glowed with their combined power as they bent light through the carefully positioned crystals surrounding their ships. Dark Swarm fleet is holding position, the sensor officer reported. They're scanning the area, trying to find our real location. Good, Jack said quietly. Let them look. Let them waste time trying to figure out which ships are real and which aren't. He keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, stand ready. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. The Lumini ship, hidden behind a particularly dense cluster of crystal-laden asteroids, pulsed with patterns of light that Kit translated. Elder Light says their people are in position. All crystal charges are ready. Lieutenant Rogers nodded grimly. Tell them to wait for my mark. We only get one shot at this. The Dark Swarm ships moved closer, their weapons charging. They fired test shots at some of the Phantom ships, their beams passing harmlessly through the light constructs. Their confusion was visible in their increasingly erratic movement patterns. They're splitting up, Kit reported, their silver eyes tracking patterns only they could see, just like you said they would, Jack. They're trying to find us by process of elimination. Jack smiled. The Dark Swarm's own tactics were working against them. By splitting their forces to search for the real ships, they were making themselves vulnerable. Now, Lieutenant. Rogers waited another moment, watching the enemy ships spread themselves thin. Now, all units, execute Operation Daybreak. The space around them exploded into blinding light as hundreds of crystal charges detonated simultaneously. The Lumini's combined power caught the light and amplified it, turning it into a wave of pure radiance that swept across the battlefield. The Dark Swarm ship's sensors, calibrated for the darkness of space, overloaded instantly. "Valor, full power to engines," Rogers commanded. "Weapons free. Target their command ship." The transport ship burst from its hiding place, its hull sparkling with crystal dust that scattered enemy targeting systems. Their modified mining charges struck true, their explosions amplified by the crystals packed inside them. The first Dark Swarm ship erupted in a cascade of secondary explosions. "They're trying to regroup," Kit called out, their hands moving faster. "But they can't see each other clearly. Their formations are breaking down." The Lumini vessel emerged from the other side of the asteroid field, its own modified weapons adding to the chaos. Light bent and twisted around them as the Lumini turned their art into warfare, creating phantom images that drew enemy fire while the real ship struck from unexpected angles. A blast rocked the Valor. "Hull damage on deck 2, someone shouted. "They're adapting their sensors." "Kit, now," Jack called. "Just like we practiced." Kit nodded, their skin glowing brightly as they coordinated with their people. Every crystal in the battlefield, from the smallest dust particle to the largest asteroid, lit up at once. But this time, instead of creating phantom ships, they bent the light inward, focusing it all on the Dark Swarm fleet. The effect was devastating. The concentrated light overloaded not just sensors but weapon systems, communication arrays, and navigation computers. Dark Swarm ships crashed into each other, their crews blind and disoriented. "Their command ship is moving." Rogers pointed to the largest enemy vessel, which was turning to retreat. "They're going to run." "No," Kit said firmly. "No more running." Their hands created one final pattern, and the remaining Lumini added their power to it. The light bent one last time, creating a blinding wall that cut off the Dark Swarm's escape route. The battle ended quickly after that. The Dark Swarm fleet, trapped and unable to fight effectively, surrendered. As their weapons powered down, Kit finally lowered their hands, exhausted but smiling. "I don't understand," one of the captured Dark Swarm commanders said later. "Why we humans risk everything for the Lumini? They weren't your people. Their fight wasn't your fight." Jack looked at Kit, who stood tall and proud beside their fellow Lumini, then back at the commander. "You're wrong. The moment we found a child alone in space, their fight became our fight. That's what humanity does. We stand up for those who need help, no matter who they are." Elder Light stepped forward, their skin glowing with patterns of gratitude. "The Dark Swarm sought to destroy us because we were different. Humanity saved us for the same reason. They saw our differences not as a threat, but as a strength." They turned to Jack. "Your people turned our light into a shield, our art into protection. You showed us that being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless." Kit moved to stand between Jack and Elder Light, a bridge between two species that had found strength in each other. "The Dark Swarm thought no one would fight for us," they said softly. "They didn't understand that sometimes the greatest power isn't in weapons or ships or tactics. Sometimes it's in simply being willing to stand up and say, 'Not today. Not ever.'"